So I think there's a kind of wonderful bit of inspiration there, and I think the other thing it illustrates is the wonderful quirks of our unbending, impersonal, points-based scoring system, whereby, of course, we end up with two great papers jointly amassing the same number of points and winning the Grand Prix together. Two papers that could not have been more different, and I think if you had a more, I don't know, kind of subjective scoring system last time, we may have decided it would send a message about planning to award the experiential case from Columbia, or that it would send a different kind of message about planning to award the wonderfully creatively award-winning Dixon's case. But neither of those things was available to the jury. It was simply that these were the two that got the most points on the criteria that Adam and Andy talked about. I think the other thing to say is it's easy to sit in the audience and be kind of completely awestruck by the clarity, simplicity and brilliance of those cases, but I can say pretty much for certain, the authors might contradict me, but there will have been a point before those cases were written and documented where they were sitting here in an audience pretty much like you, thinking, well, I did a bit of thinking, but I'm not sure it was that good, and I'm not sure it was really that simple and clear, and I don't know how the hell I'm ever going to make this case out of all this mess of stuff I've got in front of me. They were all there at that point as well, and enough thinking, enough writing, enough consultation with people in your agencies and the creative people that worked with you can potentially get the cases that look like a bit of a mess to you now to the simplicity, clarity and brilliance of those ones we've just seen. So we'll take questions in a second about the process, about anything you've got on your minds about what you've heard tonight. But just before that, a couple of diary notes for you. So the second event, the first of our particular How to Win evenings, will be on the 12th of February with our media partners, The Guardian. So you'll have me again, and also my joint Chief Strategy Officer at AMV, Bridget, who was part of the shortlisting panel last time. We'll be talking about kind of how papers are best written, talking about that shortlisting process, and we'll also have Tim Hunt from The Guardian talking about their special prize for most progressive thinking. Then on the 26th of February, we'll be back here in this room at Google, listening to Richard Huntington talking about the presentations he's made last time. We'll have Andy Nairn again coming, talking in a little bit more detail about the process and what he's looking for, and also Google talking about their special prize for best multi-channel thinking. So those are coming up. I don't know if Adam and Andy would like to come and rejoin on the stage, so you can grill them on what they're looking for. If you have any other questions, I'm sure we've got about 10-15 minutes to do questions. If you have anything on your minds, is there anybody who would like to begin? Emily has a roving microphone there. What would you like to know? Nothing at all. Come on, someone must have a question.
Font sizes or something like that. Somebody's desperate to ask, but they'll ask at the end, won't they?
So I don't know if the rest of you heard, but the question is about what's the role of effectiveness in these awards. So it's clearly somehow important. How does it play a role? Adam and Andy can give a view. I mean, I think certainly from what you've seen, these are not effectiveness awards. So these are about how good the idea is. If, however, you come up with something that has clearly failed in market, there will be some questions. However, I would say I don't think it's impossible for a piece of planning that results in a piece of creative that didn't do brilliantly in market to win an award in these cases. And I think the reason why is if you can document a really smart bit of learning, something you took from that process, there is every chance that it could win an award, as long as you can isolate the role that planning played and then something smart about why it didn't work in market necessarily, because this is about learning, not effectiveness. But I don't know if you guys have
I think that's right. I think the APG sort of, it's kind of dallied a little bit at various times over the course of the awards as to how big a role effectiveness plays, but I think has sensibly decided in the end that there's no point in trying to be the IP awards or the Effies and so on. You better keep them separate. Having said that, I think it makes a natural ending to the story. Otherwise, the reader's going to be left with a sense of, well, what happened? Next, did it work? But it doesn't have to be much more than a kind of a putting the story to bed. I wouldn't have thought.
I think it's about where the centre of gravity is rather than whether it's there or not. Both those cases were very compelling and the effectiveness at the back end, but what interests us is what happens before that.
Okay. Anyone else?
Gentleman down here.
Here we go. Got the ball rolling now.
Hello. What impact, if any, do you think the quality of the creative work has in these awards? Be honest.
I think there's a debate about the extent to which, how many of the papers we'll see this time are going to have conventional creative execution attached to them. Because I think in the past it was very much about, here were some ads that won awards, and then was there a planner somewhere in the room when they happened. Nowadays, of course, I would expect many of the cases that we have might not even have ads at the end, or might not have anything that we would conventionally call a creative execution at the end of it. What we're looking for is really great ideas that have come from a planning process. And those ideas themselves have to be great and inventive and interesting, but the creative at the end doesn't have to be award-winning. Again.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the Dixon's campaign, which I think is out, is really, really, really good, strong, creative work. But I think, my view anyway, is that the really dazzling thing there is the planning, the creative strategy that goes into the work. So it's the idea before the idea. And I think that's probably more often what we're going to be looking for, rather than just a one-off amazing piece of creative work without a sort of central thought behind it. And of course, it might not actually be a piece of creative work. It might be a product or any other number of services, utilities, all sorts of other different things.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's about the strength of the idea rather than the sizzle of the creative as such. So looking for the influence of the thinking on the idea and how strong it then turns out to be.
Oh, right over there.
Hi, is there anything that you counsel against doing either in the paper or in the presentation?
Oh, do you want to start from that end?
Bribery, obviously.
We're for it,
not
absolutely.
Go anywhere at all. I mean, I think bullshit is interesting in this, isn't it? Because there is always some post-rationalization. There's always some dressing up, and clearly you're presenting your best possible case. And how do you reconcile that with learning, right? Because at some degree, learning does involve trying some stuff and then realizing that didn't quite work, and so we had to look somewhere else. What I found particularly engaging about the Dixon story was it was a story of a journey, and things revealed themselves along that journey, which I personally was very engaged by. So I would counsel against too much gloss, I suppose. I think it's easy to make things really glossy, and we had this brilliant idea, and that naturally led us to this, and boof. And those things may be true, and we may all be geniuses. It's more interesting as a story to have the setbacks and the conflict and all that other kind of stuff as well. So don't make it too glossy if it wasn't.
Yeah, no, again, we're all in violent agreement yet again. But I suppose that the flip side for that is that it does require. It's hard to tell the story that way then. So you've got to think about the balance between, giving people a sense of which things went wrong when, but not making it too messy. Because otherwise, if you put too many, there was a sort of a time I think with a lot of the APG awards had massive detours all over the place because you had to show how the crazy creators were going off in one direction and planning sort of got them back on track. And because that sort of requirement's been taken out again of the awards now, then I think the better ones recently have been a little bit of a, we thought this, but then this happened. But they've kept the balance just right. They've not made it so mad of a detour that it just got in the way of the storytelling.
And I think, again, responding to certainly the Dixon's paper that you saw at the beginning, one of the great things about the way that story was told was about quite how much was left out. So make it as simple as possible. So in a sense, there's nothing that you shouldn't put in, but you should try and leave out as much as you can, apart from the very essence of the story and the simple clarity of it. And the word limit is not a kind of minimum to hit, it's a maximum to get to. And the amount of time that you have to talk is not, you won't be penalised for talking for only 5 minutes in that final presentation. It would be a brave thing to do, and you'd have to have a really brilliant idea at the heart of it. But I think it could be even more impressive than just about managing to get your last words out before, Adam rings a bell and tells you you've got to sit down. So sacrifice as much as you can.
But just one sort of little tip I think, which I've always found just helpful generally, not let alone in doing this sort of stuff, is almost do the presentation first, not in a cocky way like you think you're going to get through the shortlisting bit and into the next round, but it sort of forces you to obviously to signpost the different parts of your story. If you think you've only got 12 charts or 12 boards or whatever you're going to do it on, then it sort of makes you then think what are the major sort of stepping stones in the story, and then write it longhand. Often helps.
Okay. Any more? No? Richard, a quick question from
the word you've all used repeatedly is ideas.
Yes.
For ideas. Does the panel have any view or any barriers of what they think an idea is. What is an idea for the purposes of this competition?
I'm not sure we have enough time to cover that, Richard. What is an idea? I think the interesting thing is about the distinction between an idea and an execution. So I think there are elements of what we do, whether it be in product design or whether it be in web build or whether it be in advertising, which is about kind of the craft of making something brilliant at the end. I think what we tend to be talking about with the idea in this case is what's the clever bit you did that somehow kind of got this to a different or more interesting place than it otherwise would have got to. And that idea might come quite near the end of the process. It may even come a little bit during the executional phase if you can influence some of that. But I think it's about, what's that thing which then a load of other stuff resulted from. I think any individual case in any individual discipline, that idea might have a different characteristic, and it might be that once we've done this process in 2013, we may get better definition of what an idea actually is at the end of that. But I think it's the thing that then caused more interesting stuff to happen after it is as close as I can get to a definition. I don't know if Adam and Andy have better ones.
I think that will be one of the interesting things for the new learning, which we're very, very, very keen on promoting this year. But because there's quite a debate generally in the industry about what is an idea, are we looking for big ideas, or there's now sort of a kind of a sense that it's not about the one big idea, it's about the lots of little ideas that create a big idea. Is it about campaigns or actions, and all that kind of stuff is out there now. We're all probably talking about it back in our workplaces. So that's quite to have an interesting point of view, and that is precisely the sort of thing that I think the judges will be quite interested in.
Any more existential questions like that?
We're going to get so many philosophical questions, papers now, oh my God.
Okay, so if nobody has any more questions, we will see you potentially on the 12th of February for a good route around the Guardian's new building at King's Cross, which is worth having a look at, even if you don't actually come to the talk that evening. You can get in, it's all very exciting. I hope to see many of you then. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Thank you to Google again for hosting us.